Braves and baseball fans, it's time to take a trip from coast to coast across Major League Baseball.
There it goes, a long drive. If it stays fair, home run.
One strike away. Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch. Swung on and missed a perfect game.
Fly ball deep left center. Grissom on the run. Yes! 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 The Atlanta Braves have given you a championship. Listen to this crowd.
Left side, Swanson to first. Braves are world champions.
Braves and baseball talk, straight from the diamond.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation.
Here's Grant McAuley.
Hello and welcome to From the Diamond. I am Grant McAuley. These are the Kia Studios at Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. On a Sunday, we close out the weekend. The Braves closing out a trip out west, and unfortunately, they're going to be bringing home more losses than wins because it has been yet another chapter in a challenging month of June that we are going to spend much of the next couple of hours trying to talk about, make sense, parse through, and maybe give you some reasons to see what the Braves have struggled with and how they can turn some of this stuff around as well. At least that's what I've been trying to do over my first few hours of Sunday in trying to dig into what's been going on with this team that we've been watching really for about 2 weeks now. It has been an uphill battle. That's one way to put it. It's been a slog. That's another way to put it. It's just been some not so great baseball, a not so great month of June. And the Braves have dealt with it on just about every facet of how a baseball team can go through it at one time. You've had injuries, you've had bad weather, you've had bad play, you've had bad offense, you've had bad pitching. I mean, just about every box you can check has been checked for if it can go wrong, it has gone wrong in some way, shape, or form for the Braves in the month of June. Despite all of that, and while it feels like they're losing and losing and losing and losing some more this month, the Braves are somehow 9-12 in the month of June, which doesn't sound as bad as what we've seen. And I think that's kind of the operative phrase here is early on, first week, 8 days of June, it seemed like a continuation of April and May. But the last 2 weeks, and as we head toward the final few days here in the month of June and head towards the All-Star break, and at the mathematical halfway point, a club on pace for 98 wins somehow doesn't feel like it's A, on pace for 98 wins, and B, like a team that's capable of winning 98 games, more to the point. Maybe that's kind of the same thing. Either way, the Braves have not been passing the eye test here lately, and that's got some folks concerned. And I think there's some reasons for those concerns, some very valid reasons, and some very big questions that the Braves are facing in what is kind of a gut check portion of their season. And those come along at different times, and all 30 teams have to go through it sometimes. It smacks you right in the face that first week. The Braves got a taste of that last year. Other times, you're able to kind of delay that, put it off, and maybe you just kind of back into a few series where stuff just doesn't go right, and then you kind of figure it out and get back about the business of winning, which I think the Braves are still capable of doing. But it hasn't felt like they're capable of doing it for one major reason, which is actually twofold. So let's call it two major reasons. The Braves aren't hitting well, and the Braves on the whole are not pitching well. And you might remember, and you can go back in the archives because you can find From the Diamond wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow along on social media. I'm at Grant McAuley. A lot of the stuff that ends up on the show are things I might say at some point on Twitter, or I would do a lot of call-ins here on 99 The Game. You might have heard some of it there. But long story short, when we started out this season and talked about why are the Braves as good as they are, well, when you score more runs than everybody else and you allow fewer runs than everybody else, you're going to end up in the place that everyone wants to be. And that is winning the most games in Major League Baseball, and the Braves were right there for 8, 9, almost 10 weeks. But the last 2.5 weeks have probably made a lot of people question everything about what they watched over the first couple of months because of the way that the Braves have been losing. It's been one-run games. It's been getting blown out. It's been getting shut out. Every type of loss that you can have. And the offensive disappearing act that we've seen over the past couple of weeks is certainly concerning. But the month of June, the Braves are now 9-13, fewest wins in Major League Baseball in the month of June. The Cleveland Guardians, Cincinnati Reds, New York Mets, and Pittsburgh Pirates have all won just 9 games as well, but they've all lost a couple more games than the Braves had. So the Braves don't even have the worst record in baseball, but if you're in the bottom 5, you might as well. If we can round up, we can certainly round down. And that seems to be kind of where the Braves are at this point. They're not among the best clubs in Major League Baseball. They're among the clubs that are struggling the most in the month of June. And it's not the club that you want to be in. but it's absolutely something that I think that the Braves can find their way out of. It just feels like they're at the absolute bottom of the barrel when you've had the best record in baseball for 2 solid months. And this road trip has just been a continuation and yet another downturn for this club, especially offensively. They're swept in San Diego. They've lost 9 straight games at Petco Park. The offense is struggling more than we've seen at any point. And I've got some numbers. And I'm not going to break into them here, but I'm going to go ahead and caution you, give you a listener caution, advisory, that these numbers are not going to make you feel any better about what the Braves offense has been doing or, as the case may be, not doing. But the Braves offense, the version we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks, and really in the month of June, has been playing like those Colorado Rockies teams from a couple of years ago, or that Chicago White Sox team coming into this year. Not the one the Braves saw 2 weeks ago, but say the one that lost 120 games. That's the kind of offense that we're seeing out of the Braves. And the rotation, meanwhile, the starting rotation, is facing its most serious set of questions, I think, and that's saying something when you consider how much they were already having to deal with when you lost 2 starting pitchers back-to-back early in spring training, and then Spencer Strider later on, and then fast forward to this point, they're still without Spencer Strider, and they're without one of those 2 pitchers they lost in spring training. They got Hurston Waldrop back, but Spencer Schwellenbach still got a long way to go. The Braves are maintaining their hold on first place in the NL East despite all of that, but the Phillies have definitely picked it up. I mean, the Phillies, think about this, got off to such a poor start. I think they were 10 games under 500 at one point, fired their manager who they just signed to a 2-year contract extension at the winter meetings. This guy didn't even get a month into the job, and they're like, you know what, we're just going to pay you to go home. Don Mattingly has come in, and I don't think that's the reason that the Phillies are playing better in and of itself. I do think it sent a message to the club, but I just felt like at some point that team had too much talent to keep playing the way it was playing. Now, I don't feel the same about the New York Mets, but the Braves, and kind of the pot kettle situation, can't say a whole lot, and they're about to see the Mets. Can they beat the Mets, who just fired their manager? And if you go back and look at all the preseason prognosticators out there, all the projections about what the division was supposed to look like, it was the Phillies and the Mets are going to battle for it, and the Braves, they should be better than last year. I think that's about the best that most folks from a national perspective could muster. And I can't say I blame them, because the Braves didn't do a whole lot in the winter to make you think that, okay, this is going to be a completely different club than what we saw in 2025. They changed their manager. They changed their coaching staff. They brought in a couple of pieces, the biggest and best of which seems to be Mauricio Dubon. That didn't feel like the banner winter. But they added a couple of pieces here and there, and they did not address their number one need. And that's the need that we're going to spend a good portion of today's show talking about, and that, of course, is starting pitching. Now, I'm not one of those folks that's going to look back and tell you that I wasn't on the train saying, hey, look, I hope we've added another starting pitcher, or this journey is going to be a little more challenging, a little bit more uphill. Because I do think that the Braves should have added a starting pitcher in the offseason. That has nothing to do with any of the guys that got hurt in spring training or Spencer Strider again since then. I just felt like they were one veteran, proven, innings-eating starting pitcher away. Now, I go back and look at some of the names that people were throwing around. They're like, oh, you just sign this guy. It'll fix it. Chris Bassett, that'll fix it. Chris Bassett's been terrible. Him going out there every 5th day being terrible, not going to fix it. The Braves can certainly find somebody to go out there and not be great every 5th day. Unfortunately, we've seen that. And nobody's trying to go out there and be bad. Like, let me make that clear. But it just hasn't gone well. And it's been this snowball, this domino effect. And we're going to get into all the layers of what the Braves starting rotation is looking like right now, what it could look like in the future. And I don't even know how much we're going to dig into the trade deadline, because I don't think we need to spend 15 minutes talking about how Tarek Skubal would be a nice get for the Braves. He would. But we're a long way away from the Tigers, I think, dealing Tarek Skubal. I'd be happy to be wrong if the Braves want to jump the line and somehow figure out a way to get a pitcher like that, or any pitcher that they feel like can, help out this group. But I don't think those guys are out there right now. And I don't know if they were out there in the winter. I've had all kinds of conversations with all kinds of people about the Braves, and I love talking about baseball, not just when it's good, but also when it's bad. I do the show every week. I go down to the ballpark as much as I can. I like being around the sport. You don't get to pick what the result's going to be when you work on this side of it. You go down, and it's a brand new game every day. You get a new one tomorrow until you don't. And that's one of the beautiful things about baseball. But when it's not going great, which it's not going great right now for the Braves, it can feel like an eternity until you can finally get some things turned around. But as I was talking about coming into this show, one of the stats that really, gave me a little bit of solace as far as all this is concerned, where are Atlanta's playoff chances? when they came into the month with the best record in baseball, the Braves had playoff chances of 97.8%. So, they're a little bit of the unknown. We're still factored in there, but they have a very good chance to go into the postseason. 97.8%. That's pretty good. Now, after playing extremely poorly for the last 3 weeks, where do you think that put the Braves' chances of making it to the playoffs? If I were to put a poll out there, I bet there'd be people that would say, it had to go down to like 60%, maybe even 50%. Maybe they're just going to say, hey, the last couple of weeks, I don't think this club's making the playoffs. I'm giving up. We're packing it in. The Braves are not going to do that. So what do you think their chances are? This is according to Fangraphs. The Braves' chances of making the postseason, as currently comprised with their record, taking both the good things they've done and the bad things that have happened lately, 95.2%. Is that 100%? No. But the Braves have played a lot better baseball this year than bad baseball, but every team is going to go through these lulls, and the Braves are just going to have to figure it out. And they're going to have to figure it out on both sides of the ball. They've got pitching questions. They've got offensive questions. And as you look at it right now, as far as the division is concerned, the Braves came into the month of June with an 87.7% chance to win the division. Again, this is according to Fangraphs. The Phillies have continued to play very well and better than the Braves, obviously, this month. But right now, the Braves have a 68% chance of winning the division. And that's if you care at all about it. But I'm just giving you the odds, just giving you the percentages as they sit right now. You go out and keep losing games, I can promise you those percentages are going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. But if you can figure out a way to right the ship, win a few series, and kind of figure out a way to maybe circle the wagons a little bit until you start seeing the trade deadline coming along, then perhaps the Braves will be in a place that they've known a little bit about this year, and that is winning baseball. They've played a lot of that. Everything's going to go through months like this. The Braves, though, failing in several different aspects all at once, and that makes it awfully hard to see the light. But it's been kind of a disastrous month across the board and in the win column, and the statistics really bear this out, and this is where we have to get into the really unfun stuff. This is a listener warning for you as far as what's going on for the Braves offense, or more importantly, what's not going on, and let's just say scoring runs. Because the hot start may have the Braves on pace for a 98-win season, but that's only if some of these trends change. And coming into Sunday's finale against the Giants, this is how it was looking here in the month of June. The Braves having the worst month by any team in Major League Baseball in 2026. That's every month, every team, looking at every single one of them as far as on-base percentage is concerned. A .270 on-base percentage for the Braves as a team before Sunday. Weighted runs created plus, another big tool with just to look at like the overall picture of how an offense is doing. 67 WRC plus. 100 is league average. You want to be above 100. As a team, you certainly need to be at 100 or better to feel like you're just able to do the things that a 500 club can do. And the Braves offensively have not been doing those things this year. Their .338 slugging percentage this month, you guessed it, dead last in Major League Baseball. They are 28th in walk percentage this month. And their 72 runs scored, yeah, that's dead last in Major League Baseball as well. Maybe I should have led with that. But the Braves are also the only team in MLB with an offense that has a negative wins above replacement for the month. That's 21 games in, heading into Sunday's finale. This is about as bad as an offense can be or has been in Major League Baseball all season. And the Braves are going through it right now. Unfortunately, the Braves are also dealing with some problems with their starting rotation. And we'll get into this a little bit more later, but 5.86 starters ERA. It's a wild, wild thing to watch a team that goes from the best ERA in the game for 2 solid months, then have its rotation ERA balloon up to nearly 6. And I'll dig into some of those stats a little bit later. But the scores, obviously, have changed. Because the other team, they're the ones doing all the scoring, and the Braves are having all kinds of trouble doing any scoring at all. But let's talk about the hitter who's been struggling the most in the Braves lineup, because would it surprise you to know that the answer to this may actually not be Ha-Seong Kim? It's actually the guy who was the Braves' best hitter for nearly 2 months at the start of the season, and that's Drake Baldwin. Drake Baldwin has had an absolutely rocky road in his return, and it didn't feel like it was going to start out that way, because keep in mind, when Drake Baldwin stepped back in against the San Francisco Giants at Truist Park coming off the IL, he launched a 473-foot home run to dead center field, and we were just thinking, all right, here we go. Drake Baldwin's back. He hasn't missed a beat. Everything is as it should be. And I think it's going to get back there at some point. But when you look at what's happened to Drake Baldwin since, it has been a very, very different story. As you come into Sunday, after that home run, Drake Baldwin has gone 1 for 38 with 20 strikeouts. That is a better than 50% strikeout clip. This has just been a completely different hitter, and I don't know really what to tell you exactly is going wrong with Drake Baldwin, other than the strikeouts have become downright alarming. And again, that's just something the Braves could ill afford at this time, to have one of their absolute best hitters become one of their absolute worst hitters. And as far as liabilities are concerned in the lineup, you've already got a few of those. You're already trying to figure out a few different situations in your lineup. Before Drake Baldwin went on the injured list and missed, 3+ weeks, and then comes back to be a relative non-factor while you're hitting him first, second, maybe cleanup, maybe fifth, somewhere that's a featured run-producing spot in your lineup, and all you're getting is, unfortunately, a whole lot of strikeouts. And again, this is so different than any version of Drake Baldwin we've ever seen. And then you've got another hitter who's kind of in the line of usual suspects, if you want to look at what the Braves offense has been looking for this year and not getting. And unfortunately, that continues to be Austin Riley. There are 169 qualified hitters in Major League Baseball in the month of June, meaning they get at least 3 plate appearances per team game, so about 60-ish plate appearances. Austin Riley ranks 159th of the 169 players in slugging percentage. And I just picked that one stat over OPS or weighted runs created plus or any of the other stuff that just goes beyond that, because Austin Riley is here to do one thing when it comes to offense, and that is slug. He is here to hit home runs, and if he hits home runs, then the Braves are going to score runs. He's going to drive in runs, and the whole thing works. If he's not doing that, that is symptomatic of a bigger problem. And for Austin Riley, this just continues to be, one of the most challenging seasons of his career, and it really doesn't seem to be turning the corner, even though we've gotten a couple of weeks where it felt like, okay, maybe he's figured something out. Maybe some hard hit contact, maybe a 3-for-3 game with a walk, maybe a couple of home runs in a game, or 3 or 4 home runs in a week, or a homestand. Makes you feel like, okay, he's figured it out. But then there's a 0-for-15 or a 2-for-20 and a bunch of strikeouts. That's also been a huge problem for Austin Riley this year, who came into the day hitting just over 210. He's got 8 home runs and 36 runs knocked in. And again, we're at the mathematical halfway point of the year, and you're looking at an Austin Riley that's on pace to give you 16 homers and 72 runs knocked in. That quite simply is a big part of the Braves' problem. Because when he came into the year, there were a couple of things that you needed to go right. And one of them was named Michael Harris II, and he has. Another one was named Ozzie Albies, and he's also put together a good year. Matt Olson has been better than solid, all-star worthy. And then I think if you could get Ronald Acuna Jr. healthy, it could make a big difference for this offense, but he's had injury problems, and he also hasn't displayed the same kind of power that you expect from Ronald Acuna Jr. So you start to add these things up, and then you look at shortstop and wonder, okay, well, if Mauricio Dubon is not the guy playing shortstop, then how exactly are the Braves going to get any offense out of that position, particularly if Ha-Seong Kim is the guy who's getting most of the at-bats, which right now he is. But here's a couple of things I thought were interesting about Austin Riley as far as this is concerned. He talked to Jesus Cano of The Athletic this week at Petco Park and said, look, I want it more than anybody to figure it out. I want to perform for my teammates and the fans. It's 100% on me. There's been some encouragement here late, and hopefully we can continue to build on that and finish the season strong. That would be the ideal scenario, that's for sure. You need more out of Austin Riley than you've gotten, and that may be the understatement of the show, and we're not even 30 minutes in. So there you go. Now, Tim Hires, the Braves hitting coach, also spoke to The Athletic and said that Riley has been searching for results because he's wanted to do well for the team. All right, there's a common thread there. Sometimes that gets him out of his approach and kind of in a swing mode, but I think for the most part, mechanically, he's underneath some pitches that he usually puts in play. And when you're not scoring balls up, your confidence is down, and I think he's chasing pitches out of the strike zone he normally doesn't, which also doesn't help him. So it's kind of twofold when you don't feel good about your swing, and then you chase more pitches because you're trying to search for better results. And look, this is exactly what I've been talking about all year long. And if you want to tune in again to Dukes and Bell at 5:20 when I do my call-in and Mike Bell and I talk about this 2, 3, 4 times a week sometimes, what is going on with Austin Riley? This is the answer. It continues to be the answer. It's an approach thing. It's a pressing thing. I think that there could be some swing mechanics, obviously, that are in play over the course of a long season. But I've been talking about this for a while. I feel like he's caught in between on this approach. And that's what's leading him to be now overly aggressive. And when I talked to Austin Riley earlier this year, that's kind of what he was saying was his issue, being patient and trying to work some counts. Then that got him feeling like he was maybe missing the best pitches he was getting as some at-bats. So then he became a little bit more aggressive to find some opportunities and some pitches to do damage on, and it's almost like an overcorrection. And I don't know how you recalibrate at that point, but maybe that's the word for it. And I mean, that's the challenge of trying to do it against major league pitchers who are throwing harder than ever, throwing nastier stuff than ever, and trying to get you out. It's not going to be an easy thing. And it hasn't been easy. Nothing about it's been easy for Austin Riley this year. Speaking of which, Ha-Seong Kim, that's another major problem that the Braves are trying to navigate right now. Unfortunately, their $20 million shortstop signing has done nothing but struggle since returning from the IL last month. And it's gotten to that point where you kind of have to wonder. And I was asked this, 2-3 weeks ago. Is there a scenario? Is there a conversation to be had about trying to get creative and get Ha-Seong Kim turned around? And I don't know if this is something that the Braves are kicking around. I don't know that it's anything they've talked about. This is just me spitballing on a Sunday afternoon. But is it time to start thinking outside the box so far as Walt Weiss has tried to play Kim through it for a while on this road trip, and it has not been working. He's gone hitless. The strikeouts are still piling up, and his batting average continues to fall. It's below .070 now. And this is like batting the pitcher spot during the pre-DH era, and it's like batting a bad pitcher. And Ha-Seong Kim has just looked overmatched by, I won't even call it good velocity, high velocity. I mean, it's 92, 93 miles an hour. It's in the zone as well. And he's just not squaring it up. And I don't know how you get that whole thing fixed. But my curiosity is, if the rest of the team is not in a position where it can really cover for this, do the Braves need to just get a little bit more creative? Because at the moment, their lineup is struggling and struggling and struggling. And now, Ha-Seong Kim does not have to accept a minor league assignment. Let me go ahead and throw that out there right now before I get into all this. But could the Braves consider approaching him with the idea of moving into a lesser pressure place for 10 days, for 2 weeks, to try to sort it out at AAA, or maybe even go down to the complex league and then kind of bump up a couple of levels over that period of time and just kind of rebuild this thing a little bit more naturally, a little bit more organically, kind of try to take the pressure off. I know it's impossible to do, and the average is what it is. The numbers are what they are, and what they are is just untenable and unplayable if they continue, and they have shown no signs of stopping. Could he get some time to, again, I'll use that word, to recalibrate? And there's a big difference between what Ha-Seong Kim's going through and what Austin Riley's going through. This is not something that you're thinking about with every single player that goes through a tough time, a bad couple of weeks, or whatever. But the Astros did this in 2024 with Jose Abreu. He agreed to be optioned down for, I think, a month or so. He was much older. He had fallen completely apart at the plate at like 38 years old. It was the end of his career. It doesn't have to be that case with Kim, who had the injury, missed a ton of time, had a relatively short rehab assignment, and has been swimming upstream ever since. But I will say this. Maybe it's time to start thinking outside the box when it comes to Ha-Seong Kim. But bad results are happening for a multitude of reasons, and some of them have nothing to do with fortune. But I'm just looking into some of the things that right now have gone so wrong for the Braves. And offensively speaking, I think that's the big problem. While the Braves have plenty of questions in their pitching department right now, particularly in the rotation, and while they're having plenty of problems with the pitching, there is not a bigger problem for this team at this moment than this offense's inability to score runs at an even semi-consistent level. And that is really what you could underscore the last couple of weeks for the Braves with being the number one symptom of why everything has gone so wrong. Because if you look at the last 15 games, really since the start of that White Sox series where the Braves went out and got walked off and then proceeded to lose that series and then just kind of spiraled, it seems like since then everything's just kind of gone wrong. And the Braves have just not been able to find it offensively very many times since then. There's a pocket here and there where there's a 5 or 6 run outburst for this offense. But even those games are not necessarily resulting in wins because we get to complete the circle. That's the day the pitching has a problem. Like that first game against the White Sox, where you had to go into extra innings, but you held the lead until you got walked off by a 2-run homer in the bottom half of that inning. And it just feels like that just set off this cascading set of events for the Braves that they just haven't been able to get right from. We'll talk a little bit more about the offense later on. We're going to turn the page to pitching quite literally. And I think there's no other place to start right now than what's going wrong with this rotation. And this rotation is just one that you already knew the questions that you had and the limits that it had because you don't have Spencer Schwellenbach, who arguably should be your number 2 pitcher, if healthy would be your number 2 pitcher behind Chris Sale. Unfortunately, even when Chris Sale is Chris Sale, kind of like he has been all year long again, including on Sunday against the Giants, the offense is quiet and the defense even lets him down. And that just continues to be the frustration of it all, because even when Chris Sale is going well, you can't necessarily count on it to result in a win. Pitching ranks for the month of June as far as starting rotations are concerned. The Braves have a 5.86 ERA. That's 26th in Major League Baseball. I shudder to think about the 4 teams that are worse, because 5.86 is about as bad as you can get. As far as some of the other stats, 101 innings pitched. That's 26th in baseball, so you're not getting the innings that you need to be getting from the starting rotation right now. 25 other clubs are doing a better job of going deeper into the game, and that matters for 2 reasons. Number 1, you need more from your rotation, and number 2, that's what sets up your bullpen to be more successful. So when that number starts to go down, that's one of the big indicators to me of a pitching staff that is really on the verge of having some big problems, is that starting rotation stops covering innings. All of a sudden, instead of averaging 6 1/3 innings, now it's 5 innings, maybe 5 1/3 innings. And that's kind of where the Braves have been in the month of June. Their walk rate is the 4th highest in baseball. And if you just want to throw this factor in there, when other teams put the ball in play, it's the 4th highest in baseball as well. So when there's contact, usually nothing good's happening. Teams are making more contact against the Braves, and you're putting runners on for free. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a rotation that's really setting the team up for success. And the pitching struggles have been a problem. But I will stipulate, if you don't score runs, you're not going to win very many games. But as far as who's going through it the worst on the starting rotation amongst the healthy arms, well, that'd be Bryce Elder. Bryce Elder finds himself in an unfortunately familiar place. He gets off to a great start, and then it just starts to unravel on Bryce Elder for whatever reason. He was sitting on a 2.66 ERA through 14 starts. And over the course of, 30 starts, 31 starts, 32 starts, whatever it is you want to get out of a rotation member, you expect there to be 3, 4, maybe 5. They're just kind of those just absolute clunkers. Doesn't mean you give up 8 runs, which happened 2 starts ago. But it's just one of those where, hey, it just wasn't your day. Because in the other 25 or 26 starts, if you've done your job, things kind of work out. But the last 3 starts, I mean, they haven't just been clunkers. They've been whatever the next level is, abysmal. 0-3 with a 12.21 ERA is Bryce Elder in 14 innings pitched. 27 hits allowed, 5 of those home runs, 19 earned runs across those 14 innings. I mean, could it get worse? Probably. Those are famous last words. But when we look at why the rotation has a 5.86 ERA in the month of June, just that 3-start sample for Bryce Elder added an entire run to the rotation's ERA. Everybody else ain't pitching great. They're at 4.84. That includes Chris Sale, who's under 2.5 for the month. So in the non-Chris Sale division, everyone else is pretty much taking it on the chin at some point, some more than others. But when everything else is going wrong with this rotation, the Elder collapse could not have come at a worse time. And I'm not telling you that Bryce Elder was expected or needed to finish the year with a 2.66 ERA. If you told me he could, I'd sign up for it. But if it could just be the quality start, the 6 innings, 3 or fewer earned runs, more times than not, that should keep this club in the ballgame, but that has not been happening. In fact, it's been the exact opposite. The fact that he's been able to cover a few extra innings a couple of times has maybe been helpful for the bullpen, but if you've given up 8 runs in the second, which is what happened 2 starts ago, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. So the question becomes, what does this rotation look like? And we got to talk about who's not going to factor in anytime soon, because Spencer Strider, the MRI, showed that there was no damage to his elbow, but inflammation has him shut down for a month. And then there's Spencer Schwellenbach, who's on the road back from elbow surgery himself. And it will be great if you could factor either one of them back at some point into the situation down the stretch. But no one is or should be planning on that being the impact for the Braves rotation. If it proves you wrong, great. But you can't plan on those guys being able to contribute a lot. It is, at this point, yes, it's a bonus. Schwellenbach, a little bit different story than Strider, because we don't really know how his rehab is going to play out and maybe what he'll look like or when exactly he can be back. It seems like Strider's got a very different path, and I think getting back in September at all would be a win of some sorts for Strider. But in the meantime, you have a very interesting grouping that's being pushed into action in a very different way. You got Reynaldo Lopez, who's back in rotation after being, I don't want to say banished, but moved to the bullpen. He's been on a pitch count, but he's been effective. He started on Friday night, 3 innings of 1-run ball there. And Hurston Waldrop was called up, and I think it was basically because you just had to have another fresh arm, and you felt like he at least had built up his pitch count enough to throw multiple innings. And we saw that happen on Friday night, again, when the Braves beat the Giants by a 3-1 score. And he's going to remain with the club to provide some multiple innings in what they call that piggybacking situation. Will it be Waldrop starting and somebody else coming in after him? Will it be somebody starting and then Waldrop coming in the way he did on Friday? I don't know. But then there's Grant Holmes, who also pitched on relief on Saturday and was great. And of the three of those guys, I want to talk about Holmes the most because if the Braves have a piggyback situation going on to cover a spot in their rotation, you can let Holmes start the game or come into relief and perhaps throw you 3, maybe 4 innings. And it allows him to basically go one time through the order and maybe a couple of extra batters. When he's at his absolute best, that's kind of what it's been this year. Because Grant Holmes, first time through, has been absolutely shut down. Opponents hitting 200 against him, a sub-600 OPS, just a couple of home runs. But that second time through the order, boom, opponents are hitting 309 with 11 home runs and an OPS over 1,000. That's something that I just don't think you can ignore those numbers anymore. As nice as it would be to say, hey, Grant Holmes is operating as the 5th starter and, your expectations kind of are what they are sometimes as you go further down that depth chart, I just don't think you can afford to ignore those kind of numbers at this point. The sample size is big enough that we know what people are, and I think we know in some cases what people are not. But let me circle back to Ronaldo Lopez, who all of a sudden is getting that chance to contribute the way he wants to again in the starting rotation. 3 innings, 1 run, 4 hits, no walks, 1 strikeout against the Giants on 57 pitches on Friday. That followed his 3-inning, 1-run ball in relief against the Milwaukee Brewers. And he could add a little bit to that pitch count maybe. But you could make something of Lopez, Holmes, and Waldrop, some version of that work to cover at least one spot in the rotation. I don't know what you do beyond that, though. I don't know who the second piggyback option is for that, at least until you can get Waldrop and his pitch count built up more, because I think he's the guy that's going to have that opportunity to really step into a rotation spot and maybe give you something like he did last year. But you've got to have it at some point sooner than later. And I know some people are going to wonder, and we saw him pitch again on Sunday, but I don't think Didier Fuentes is really going to be pushed into a starting role anymore in the middle of all of this. He's been used more and more and more like they're training him to be a leverage reliever, at least for this year. And that's where he's really been contributing. J.R. Ritchie, I don't know. He's not out of the question, but his last few outings have given you a significant question about what exactly he can give you because the walks have been a problem. He went 5 innings in his last 2 outings, but gave up 5 runs in both of them, including coughing up that lead in San Diego where the Braves had a chance to win a game and were unable to finish the drill. He also gave up 3 home runs against the Giants in the start before that. But the walks against San Diego in particular were an issue on June 23rd. I think he's going to get more chances this year. There's no reason to, completely and totally move on from J.R. Ritchie. He's 22. He's got a ton of potential. But right now you're looking for results. The potential is helpful, and it gets you there. But the results are what's going to keep you there. And we'll see what exactly the Braves' pitching plans are as you move forward. But coming up against the Cardinals, which is that next series after they get done with what is just kind of turned into an absolutely disastrous road trip, Martin Perez is going to start, and then the Braves are going to try to piece it together with a bunch of the guys I just talked about. Bryce Elder is likely going to get some extra time, according to Mark Bowman of MLB.com, because his velocity was down a little bit in his most recent start against San Francisco, so the pitching plan's likely to be what I would refer to as a fluid situation for some time here. And even Chris Sale, who pitched again on Sunday and gave up 2 runs, only one of them earned, and was let down by his defense in his final inning, he hasn't been able to give the Braves the edge because nobody's scoring for Chris Sale. He has a 2.65 ERA in his first 3 starts of the month, goes out and throws 6 innings of 2-run ball, but only 1 earned on Sunday, and the Braves have scored exactly 7 runs in his 4 starts this month. It has been nothing but frustrations when it comes to what the Braves pitching is looking like, in addition to what the Braves offense is looking like. So this is not a fun show, not a bunch of fun numbers, and not a fun situation, all seriousness, that the Braves find themselves in right now, because the club, again, on pace still for 98 wins, sitting in first place, has looked like anything but that, and this has been going on for a while. And we still got to talk about some other areas of this club that need some improvement. We still got to talk about the trade deadline, but we're going to stick a pin in all that. We're going to have what we call a palate cleanser. We're going to talk about something that I think's made a lot of people smile this year, and that has been what's going on in the Braves farm system, in particular, what's happening up in Rome. Now, Rome is the place I've been going to games for over 20 years. I was up there in college when the Rome Braves came into existence. They had some guys you might have heard of, Jeff Francoeur, Brian McCann. They did a little bit of winning up there in Rome. Well, things may have changed. The logo may have changed. The name of the team may have changed. The Rome Emperors now, the Emperor Penguins, they've done a really nice job with that rebranding, if you will. But what's really been going on out there is a great brand of baseball. And it has been led in large part by a prospect that I think people are starting to take more and more and more notice of, not just on a Braves level, but on a national level. Just soaring up those prospect hot sheets is a kid named Eric Hartman, who just turned 20 years old. The kid's batting .297 with 19 homers and 29 stolen bases. And I don't know if you need me to do the math for you, but I will. When you get to the halfway point, you can kind of multiply by 2, and that may be what their season looks like, at least as far as the pace is concerned. And I think there's a lot to be excited about when it comes to even a 2020 season in the minor leagues. And you start to hear the comparisons, and fair or unfair. You start to think about maybe this is the most exciting position player prospect the Braves have had since, ... Ronald Acuna Jr. Pretty good name, pretty good prospect, turned into a pretty good player. And we'll talk a little bit more about Ronald later on, but Eric Hartman has really gone from a toolsy player that you kind of expected some big things out of, but you didn't know what the finished product would look like, all of a sudden to somebody that you can kind of start dreaming about. What's their path to the big leagues look like? How quickly can they get there? Can they continue to put up these numbers as they climb the system? And we'll find out the answers to all those questions. But again, hitting nearly 300 and knocking on the door of a 2020 season halfway through the year. Some very, very impressive stuff for Eric Hartman. So I got a chance to sit down with the Rome Braves outfielder extraordinaire and kind of get to know him just a little bit. What makes him tick, what he thinks of his year thus far, and of course, maybe the future. What does that look like for him? Eric, I would say that 2026 has been quite a year for you thus far, so I'm going to open it up with the most general question I can ask you for it. What has 2026 been like? Because it seems like some big things have been happening for you on the field.
I would say just a lot of fun. Just having fun every day really just allows everything else to work, and I think, just enjoying the process, enjoying the ups, enjoying the downs, and know that it's a sport and anything can happen. So being excited for when things go good and being level when things don't go as planned.
Yep, sounds like you've had an opportunity to really kind of find out what the professional baseball life is all about. There's another game tomorrow until there's not, basically, so a lot to be learned, good and the bad and everything in between. Before we kind of dive into your story, I did want to ask you about the guys that you're playing with. A lot of talent, a lot of excitement, I'm sure, on a daily basis to come out to the ballpark with these guys. What has made the Rome Emperor such an exciting team this year?
Just that we can really win any ball game, and we're never out of it in any given day, so everyone's really exciting based on just we're stacking at-bats, and every at-bat something cool could happen. So all the guys are really good and really positive, and I think that just translates into every day.
As far as what you're doing every day, it would seem like kind of leveling up your game this year has been, I would say, the overall theme for it. Walk me through the difference between, say, the 2025 season and the things that you learned and the adjustments you wanted to make over the winter, and how you've kind of been able to parlay that into a very successful first half here in 2026.
Just hammering the basics, really. I wouldn't say it's made anything crazy, but just really learning and fixing and really focusing on the things I do really well and mastering those, and then just being able to repeat that day-to-day basis and trusting myself when a bad game happens, that what brought me success before, and then just kind of repeating the things that brought me success and just keeping a steady head on my shoulders.
One of the things I love about the minor leagues is it is kind of the story of development, of everybody kind of coming in their own at different times, learning more about themselves through the successes and through the failures as well. Let me flash back even further for you. What got you into the game of baseball? What kind of brought you out to the diamond and, I guess, lit the fire and the passion with which you're still playing?
I would say my dad and my grandpa both just grew up playing the sport and gave me the love I have for it today.
A lot of folks kind of look at the draft, the international signings, traded from another organization. A lot of different things can bring a team together. For you, the final pick that the Braves made in a draft class, and that's oftentimes a unique one because you don't always know about the signability of that, but obviously you were able to talk with the Braves, come to an agreement. Could you walk me through what that draft process was like for you? Because, again, a lot of people get lost in who was getting picked first, but as it happens, impactful players can be picked throughout the draft.
Yeah, it wasn't really that crazy. They kind of told me like the final rounds like 15 through 19, but definitely was getting a little worried getting on as I saw rounds going by, but was really pumped to see my name pop up last pick.
Yeah, and I would say that it's worked out pretty well thus far for the Braves. I want to talk about your style. I think we've seen some of the speed that you were flashing early in your career, but you've really grown into the power this year. I know you said it was kind of hammering the basics and kind of sticking with those things. Anybody you were working with in particular, whether it's this year in spring training or over the winter, that kind of maybe helped you maximize that part of your game?
All my coaches, really. All my coaches has helped me hone in on better misses in terms of just fly ball percentage and all this, and just hard hit percentage, and really just hammering down my path and my approach really too. So like all my coaches throughout spring training and at Rome here. So
the spring training experience for minor leaguers, a lot of folks listening kind of know it's a different one than the major league side. That gets started a little bit earlier than the minor league stuff starts. Did you have an opportunity at all to kind of get around or be adjacent to, I guess, maybe what was going on the major league side and observe some different things, or maybe talk with some coaches or players that were able to give you a little bit of feedback to kind of get the year going and maybe just help you out in just a little ways that can help a baseball player kind of take that next step?
Yeah, I got backed up a few big league games, and I think just being around the guys and just realizing that for them it's just a game too, and this is just watching them handle their business is I think a really important aspect of it, and learning from that and learning that they don't put too much pressure on themselves even when everyone's looking at them. So I think learning from that really helped me.
Now, success on the field individually is obviously important, but one of the things that the Braves have always prided themselves on as they've groomed the next generation of Braves players is the opportunity to win as a team. As somebody who's going out there, going to battle every single day, winning obviously beats losing, but how critical is that to this step as you go along in the minor leagues to take the opportunity to have those competitive teams, the teams that can come out and win a championship at whatever level you're at?
I think just wanting to win and like knowing you can win, that's when everyone succeeds individually. But when you lose focus of that, then that's when stuff hits the fan and you start losing some of your individual talents. But when you're all just worried about winning and doing whatever you can to help the team win, then that's when you really shine.
I got to talk to Tate Southasine a little bit earlier. Obviously, he was just promoted up to Rome. He told me that you were one of the first guys that he kind of got to know last year as he was just coming into pro ball, getting his feet wet a little bit. You guys are reunited here in Rome. Describe to me kind of what his game has looked like and maybe seeing the differences in what a year in pro ball can make, because it seems like he's been able to level up quite a bit this year as well.
Yeah, like when he first came in, he was just so talented, and he still is, and he's just cleaned up a few things with his swing and his approach, and it just really shows, and it's totally impressive just how far even just like confidence-wise, like a year under your belt can give you, and I'm looking forward to watching him too.
A couple more for you. I want to wrap up asking about some individual stuff. I know not every player is going to come into a year and say, I need to get to X statistics or pile up this particular line. Are there certain goals or certain levels that you do set out for in the year and say, you know what, I'd like to do this thing or that thing? I know being healthy every day is what helps you do that, but any particular statistical things that you were focused on coming into the year that you've been able to accomplish?
Not really. I would say just showing up every day and, like you said, staying on the ball field and giving it my best, but I wasn't. I think as soon as you put a number on anything, it slows down. So I just like keeping it pushing and keeping it going.
I really like that. I think that's a great way to look at it, because you don't want to get too focused on the here and now, because it might keep you from where you're going to be tomorrow. So that brings me to my final question, which is, we don't know what the tomorrows are going to bring, but if you play really well in the minor leagues, you oftentimes will change addresses a couple of times. Is there any of that kind of stuff that you're allowing to creep into the back of your mind, or are you really trying to be solely focused on what you're doing today and getting ready to do it all over again tomorrow?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. Like I'm just really focused on controlling the controllables and doing whatever I can to stay here. And taking it a day at a time, because stuff can change really quickly, and I'm just enjoying the process here.
All right. Well, I think folks are enjoying the process here in Rome. It's been a great season thus far. A lot of baseball left to be played. Thanks so much for the time, and good luck the rest of the way.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
That's Rome outfielder Eric Hartman. He's in high A right now. He's been putting on a show there all year long, hitting nearly 300. He's got 19 homers. He's stolen 29 bases. He stole 49, I believe it was, last year. It was a 40-plus campaign anyway. So you knew the speed was there. It was the power that he's really grown into. And he talked a little bit about there, and I know that it's hard to get different players, especially young players, to really, really communicate on like the nitty-gritty of what they're working with, because I think as much as anything, especially for the minor league guys and somebody who just turned 20 years old, you're just trying to figure out the things you can. It's not necessarily being able to over-communicate all of it. You're just kind of becoming that player right now. And that's kind of part of the fun part of the process for me as somebody who spent some time riding around on buses in the minor leagues a while back. It was fun to get to know those players, get to know their stories, and to get to bring some of those here on the show. Next week, you'll hear my conversation with Tate Southasine. He was the Braves' first-round pick in 2025. He just got called up to the Rome Emperors not long ago, and this is an embarrassment of riches for this team in high A. If you've not gotten up there or done your Braves minor league tour, and maybe, just saying, this would be a good time to go do it. While things are not going so well, you can just kind of distract yourself with maybe a little bit of a look at the future for the Braves. But either way, all jokes aside, there's nothing funny about what the Rome Emperors have assembled up there. It's Eric Hartman, Tate Southasine, who this year is batting .276. He's just hit a couple of home runs in high A, so maybe getting some comfort there at the plate. 10 homers, 42 stolen bases, 56 runs scored already this year. John Heel is also on that team. He's batting .267, 11 homers. He's knocked in 41. He's stolen 33 bases. And then you've got Isaiah Drake, who's also putting together a nice season, hitting, I think, in the mid-260s. He's got 12 homers, 19 steals, and he's another, like, just toolsy kid that you saw and you thought is a 2023 draft pick that has got a lot of potential, but it's taken a minute to get it assembled. But now all of a sudden you're seeing it, and you can start stacking some of these guys together, and it's very exciting to think about it because of, obviously, the ages that these guys are and how much they could factor into the future of the Braves. We'll see. A couple of pitchers to look for if you head on up to Rome. Briggs McKenzie, who's pitched at a couple different levels this year. He's 1-0, a 2.08 ERA in 26 innings. He struck out 31 batters. Very exciting young prospect. And, of course, Cam Caminiti, who was one of the Braves' top picks a couple of years ago, was their top pick in the draft out of high school. ERA a little bit higher, but the strikeouts are there, and a lot of excitement as he continues to polish his game and look to take it to that next level. So a very nice crop of prospects up in Rome. So if you haven't gotten a chance to head on up there, check their schedule. It's one of the fun stops as far as Braves minor league teams are concerned. I'll always have a soft spot for Rome. I spent a lot of time up there at that ballpark. They'll treat you well, and I think you'll get to enjoy watching a pretty good team. So head on up there. Check out the Rome Emperors. But we got to turn the page right on back to the Atlanta Braves out in San Francisco, wrapping things up on their road trip, which has not gone well, which has been kind of part and parcel to what we've been seeing for the Braves here in recent weeks. Yes, that's right, weeks. Not recent days, not recent homestand, not recent road trip. No, this has really started to pile up here for the Braves. It's compounding, the problems are for this team, and how exactly they get out of it is going to start with some very simple things, and that includes scoring more runs. And how do you score more runs? Well, it would help if you had your leadoff hitter, and the Braves currently do not have their leadoff hitter. Ronald Acuna Jr. is one piece of the puzzle I think that could make a profound difference. I already gave the understatement of the day earlier. This is another one. Go ahead and put it on the list. He has now missed 15 games with his second left hamstring strain. Braves are going to give him more than adequate time to heal up this time around because it has been a recurrent problem. Again, he strained it and missed, I believe it was 14 games the first time. He's eligible to come off the IL already, but obviously has not. Once the Braves get home, maybe we'll start to get a timetable for Ronald Acuna Jr. at some point as the Braves welcome the Cardinals, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later on in the show as we wrap things up. But as the Braves give him that time, I just have to kind of wonder, how soon will he be back and how much time are they going to give him, and how long can you afford to wait while the offense flounders if Acuna is, in fact, ready to play again? I'm not advising rushing him. I'm not advising taking a small problem and making it a larger problem, especially since it's happened twice this year already. But this is quite a conundrum, I think, for the Braves because it's not like they've completely fallen out of position to do some of the things they want to do later in the year. Like, you have to still, balance the short-term needs with the long-term objectives and obviously the long-term perspective. And I think baseball is the one sport that really, really makes you kind of pound your head against the wall and keep that in mind, because even as there's struggles and some pains for the Braves here in the middle of the season, can you kind of hold it together long enough to get some guys back and play a better brand of baseball? And I think the Braves have the opportunity to do that. But let's just look at it for what it is. The Braves are 37-16 with Ronald Acuna Jr. this season. And sure, some other things were going right. Some other players contributed to that. I'm not saying it's all Ronald Acuna Jr., but without him, coming into Sunday, the Braves are 12-16. And I'm just saying I don't think that's a coincidence. And say what you want, and I know you will, because I read social media and everything else, but this team is obviously better when Acuna is in the lineup every day. And I know it's obvious, but it's the truth. And his .373 on-base percentage is tops on the club. And if you could go ahead and install that back in the leadoff spot, I think it'd make quite a difference. Everyone else who has started for the Braves in the leadoff spot has combined to bat .229 with an on-base percentage just above .300. And in 25 games coming into Sunday, the Braves leadoff spot, other than Ronald Acuna Jr., had scored exactly 10 runs. 10 runs in 25 games from your leadoff man? That feels a lot like what the Braves offense is looking like here lately, and Ronald Acuna Jr. can obviously make a difference with that. And on top of that, in those 25 games, if you care about this thing, and it's just part of what Ronald can do, and again, I'm not advising that you make the hamstring thing worse, but all these other leadoff guys, the other three guys I think that have gotten starts there, have stolen exactly one base in 25 games. That's not exactly the ideal way to start off things for your lineup. This has just not been a very good offense. And again, I know this is kind of an obvious statement, and it's a fact. It's an absolute. You've got to score more runs. A team that has this much trouble scoring runs is not going to win games. That's just what it is. Let's look at a couple other things as far as what the Braves are dealing with, because the injuries, they don't just stop in the starting rotation. Well, of course, they extend out to the bullpen now, where Robert Suarez was placed on the injured list due to elbow inflammation. His MRI was clean. The Braves are hoping he's going to be back soon. Like Tyler Kinley had a little while. Raisel Iglesias, a little while on the IL. Braves were able to kind of patch that over, but Robert Suarez is the reliever in Major League Baseball with the best ERA. I know that's not the end-all, be-all, but if you've watched him pitch, you know exactly how good he is and how much he means to the late innings for the Braves, because it destabilizes one of the biggest strengths of this club. One of the spots that the Braves covered better than just about anybody else in baseball was innings 7, 8, and 9. That's going to put more on Dylan Lee, obviously, who we saw pitch again on Sunday. He could be the regular eighth-inning setup guy, but then you have to wonder, do you want to save your best left-handed reliever only to pitch in that one spot? And I think the answer to that is probably no. Raisel Iglesias obviously will be closing things out, but there's some other opportunity for guys in that bullpen, including Dylan Dodd and Tyler Kinley, to get some bigger outs in the middle innings and just bridging from the rotation to the late inning guys, even if you got Suarez down. And the other thing about this is we talked about the injuries in the rotation, if you want to help out the bullpen, you got to get more innings than you're getting out of your starters, who are averaging just under 5 innings per start this month and pushing an ERA of nearly 6. Another reliever, though, who I think could help out the Braves' cause is Didier Fuentes. I was talking about him a little bit earlier as far as what the Braves might be trying to do starting rotation-wise and whether or not he's a candidate to help them out right now. And I just don't think that that's what they're looking at and what they're asking of Didier Fuentes right now. But Fuentes, that's a guy that I would factor into my late inning mix. If you need him, he certainly seems to be game for it. But with the trade deadline still weeks away, you're going to have to kind of make some things happen with the guys that you have in-house right now. There's not a lot that Alex Anthopoulos can do right now also until other teams decide to deal. But the Braves are uniquely poised at this point, I think, to go out with the farm system that they have right now, with the trade pieces that they have, and if they want to go all in on somebody, a big impact piece, and probably somebody that would be more than a rental, I think that ideally would be what the Braves want, they could do that. They actually have the prospects to do that. They have the money, the capital to do that as well. Will they is a question that we may not know for another 4 or 5 weeks until teams start really deciding, okay, we're going to sell. The expanded playoffs has changed the way that clubs do their math and do their calculus about when can we conceivably look at our fan base and say, look, there's just not a path for us. Well, when you've got more and more and more teams within 3 or 4 games of a wild card, you really can't call it in the first, second, third week of July. You almost have to take it all the way down to the wire to figure that whole thing out. Can the Braves do some smaller deals? Is there something that could come together that could help them out the way that they went out and got Jock Peterson, say, in 2021? I think so. And I'm sure Alex Anthopoulos and his front office are looking for ways to do that. Because as the Braves lost another series over the weekend to the San Francisco Giants and come home 1-5 on this road trip, and their season and their month of June anyway continues to take on water and head in the wrong direction, you got to do anything you can, I think. And I'm sure they will, as far as going out and looking for pieces. But some of the guys in-house are going to have to step up and do more. We talked about Austin Riley earlier on. That is probably the number one player that you look at and say, we've got to have more from him. You got to get Ronald Acuna Jr. healthy and get more from Ronald Acuna Jr. as well. You got to get more from Drake Baldwin than you're getting lately. And I know that might sound like, okay, hey, whoa, slow down there. Drake Baldwin's having a good year. He is. He's having a great year. But the last couple of weeks for Drake Baldwin have been about as bad as anybody in the lineup has gone through this year. He's got to get it sorted out because he's too important for that to continue. Matt Olson and Mauricio Dubon, and to some extent Michael Harris and Ozzie Albies, are kind of the constants for your offense right now. And then everything else is in question. And you can't have 5 spots of your 9 all going through it at the same time. That's just going to cause the results that I just talked about. Because now, for the 10th time in 16 games, the Braves have scored fewer than 3 runs, as you put Sunday on the board in that. And for the 7th time in 16 games, they scored 2 or fewer runs. And 2 or fewer runs is not going to get it done most days. And unfortunately, a lot of those 2 or fewer runs seem to be happening on days when Chris Sale is the guy who started for you, and that was the case Sunday. The Braves defense let him down. Braves scored some late runs, one in the 8th, one in the 9th, but not enough, as the Giants were able to scratch 2 across on Chris Sale in the 6th inning, add another in the 7th, and win the series 2-1 over the Braves. They lost on Friday, did the Giants. They came back, shut out the Braves on Saturday, and held them down for the most part on Sunday as well, as the Braves' offensive struggles continue. 5 runs scored in this series against the Giants. On this road trip in 6 games, the Braves averaged about 2 runs per game. And this continues to be a very troubling trend when your best pitcher is on the mound, because when Chris Sale has been pitching, and I know you don't get to pick the days and the support that you get, or there's all kinds of pitchers that would line up asking to pitch on the day where the team scores all the runs, but for whatever reason, Chris Sale continues to draw the short straw as far as that's concerned. 9 runs scored by the Braves in Sale's last 4 starts. And if you want to feel a little bit worse about it, in 5 of the last 8 starts for Chris Sale, the Braves have scored 2 runs or less. They've lost all 5 of those games, including on Sunday. So basically, you need to score more runs on the day Chris Sale pitches. That could be one of the ways that the Braves could figure out to win some baseball games. But it's not all on Chris Sale, and it's not just all about the offense. The Braves have had some pitching problems, and on Sunday, I didn't even really spend a lot of time prepping for this on the show because it hadn't really been the problem, but defense was an issue for the Braves in the 6th inning. A couple of bad throws kind of opened the door, and it wasn't the floodgates. It was just left the door cracked, and the Giants scored twice. They added that next run in the 7th inning, that insurance run, went up 3-0. And unfortunately for the Braves offense, as I just went over, just not able to find the runs. And this has been kind of a disturbing trend. If you look at the overall for this lineup, it's typically 4 guys that you're circling, hoping they do some damage. It's Michael Harris II. It's Matt Olson. It's Ozzie Albies. It's Mauricio Dubon. And maybe you're hoping other guys do it. Let me put it that way. But you're kind of really leaning on those guys because they're the only ones that have really produced this month. And we're talking about 22 games now. The Braves are now 9-13, fewest wins in Major League Baseball in the month of June. It's not an absolute free fall, but it certainly has been feeling like it because for the second time this month already, the Braves have lost 6 out of 7 games. They just lost 5 out of 6 on this road trip. So for as good as you might have felt coming out of the Milwaukee series, I know they got mollywopped on Sunday when Bryce Elder got lit up for 8 runs in the 2nd inning. But the Braves won a series. And they did so against Mizorowski and Harrison, 2 of the better pitchers the Brewers have. I mean, the Miz is probably the best pitcher in baseball, for being honest. The Braves figured out a way to win. And not only win, but beat him while he was still in. So it seemed like that quick reminder of, hey, the Braves are still capable of finding it at the times that they need to. But as quickly as they found it over the weekend against Milwaukee, they promptly lost it. They got swept by the Padres and just lost 2 out of 3 to the San Francisco Giants. So it continues to be a challenge. Meanwhile, the Braves are trying to hold on to their 4-game lead over the Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies on Sunday held on to beat the New York Mets by a 5-4 score, and that means that the Braves, who came into this month leading the division by 9.5 games, see their lead trimmed all the way down to 3 games. Braves are 49-33, Phillies 47-37, and that is despite starting, I believe, 9-19. Now, when we talked about the Braves and the Phillies back in April, which feels like a while ago, because I think we're all aging in dog years over the past couple of weeks anyway, the Braves and Phillies are not going to meet again until September. You got 4 games in Philadelphia. You got 3 games at Truist Park. So 7 meetings between those 2 teams. So between now and then, a lot can happen. But you just want to at least keep this thing manageable. And if you're the Braves, you want to hold on to the lead, have as much of an advantage as you can. But the Phillies are showing no sign of slowing down. They are not as bad a team as they were in the month of April, and I think they've proven that now. And the Braves, despite playing their worst baseball of the year here over the past 3 weeks, I don't think they're as bad a team as they're playing right now. But how long this goes on and how much longer this goes on could make this a very, very interesting, in all the wrong kind of ways, summer for the Braves as we head into the dog days. And I talked about this back in April, too. It's not any kind of victory lap or validation for me, but I've been around enough baseball to know that, hey, a 10-game lead is awesome. You would much rather have it any time that you can. But there are a lot of things that can happen over the course of a Major League Baseball season, and we just got a reminder of that as the Braves went into a tailspin and the Phillies just continued to consistently win and have chipped away at this lead and have now whittled it all the way down to 3. So what's ahead of us, though, is the opportunity that all clubs have. decision-making time in advance of the trade deadline, which is still about 5 weeks away. There's not a lot Alex Anthopoulos can do until teams decide they're ready to deal. And with the expanded playoffs, there's just no guarantee that teams are going to call it early with their impact players. Could you make some minor trades, pick up some players that could just help you out? Got to be a Band-Aid for a little while? Sure. There could be some guys out there. But I also will push back on the idea that, oh, hey, well, if you want to get it going, just overpay. I think that's a terrible idea, personally. If you're talking about rental players, in theory, could you do that and make teams decide to strike a deal early? Sure. But why would you strip mine the farm system that you just spent all this time rebuilding for rentals, particularly rental pitchers? But they won't be saving your season, these pitchers that you want to trade for and entice other teams into trading if you can't score runs. And the Braves right now cannot score runs consistently. And they're going to have to figure out a way to do it. You know, some of the excitement about having some reserve players and pulling some of the right levers and getting walk-off grand slams from Dominic Smith, who did come up and pinch hit in the ninth inning on Sunday, found his way on base, was a potential tying run. Braves left that runner out there. Tying run was on second base when the game ended on Sunday. But be that as it may, I don't think you were asking for Dominic Smith and Mike Yastrzemski and even Mauricio Dubon and some of the other role players to be the ones that are carrying the load for this team, carrying the freight. Matt Olson's doing it. Michael Harris has been doing it. I think Ozzie Albies has been doing it. Drake Baldwin has been terrific this year, but his last couple of weeks has been extremely challenging. But I'm going to put him in the list of net positives. But some of the guys, you've got to get healthy. Ronald Acuna Jr., number one. And then beyond that, you got to get more out of Austin Riley. There's just no two ways about it. And Ha-Seong Kim, we got into this a lot earlier in the show. If you're asking me places that the Braves could really look to upgrade themselves beyond the obvious, which is pitching, every contender's out there looking for pitching. They're looking for starters. Braves, I would say, are probably looking at least 2 starters in an ideal world. If everything were to fall the way they want it to, I think they'd go get 2 starting pitchers. And I'm not talking about former Cy Young Award winners, but if you could get somebody that has years of control, that would be ideal, especially if you're going to play the high prospect price. If you're going to pay that price, you want to have somebody that can help you win in 2026, yes. But how about 2027 and maybe 2028? Wouldn't that be nice? If you're going to pay that price, especially if you got teams knocking on your door or calling you, ringing your phone off the hook saying, hey, we like Eric Hartman. Well, if I'm the Braves, I like him too. And that's not a name I'm looking to send off in a bunch of trades, or really any trade. But sometimes that's going to be the price of doing business if you are a team that believes you have the capability of winning in October. Does this last 3 weeks dissuade you from thinking, if you're the Braves and you're on pace for 97, 98 wins still, despite playing the worst brand of baseball you've played since at least last year, if not 10 years ago, does anything about this dissuade you from being aggressive at the trade deadline if you're Alex Anthopoulos? Only he knows the answer. But I'm going to wager, no pun intended, that he still believes in this club and would like to find a way to make it better, and in fact that those searches and those phone calls are ongoing. But I don't expect any big moving and shaking to happen until much, much, much closer to the trade deadline, which is August the 3rd, if you're scoring at home. And I know this may be unpopular to some, but you've got to get more out of this current group right now and then add your reinforcements, by all means. You try to find the parts that are out there that could help you out, but this is a team that's going to have to find a way to start hitting again. Ronald Acuna Jr. could help. Drake Baldwin's going to figure his stuff out, but it's been hard to watch lately. I don't know what you do at shortstop, but to go back to my earlier point about ways and places you could go and things you could add, maybe the Braves look at adding a shortstop. Or maybe they put Mauricio Dubon at shortstop and say, hey, we've done all we can with the Ha-Seong Kim thing right now. He's just going to have to ride the pine. And we figure out maybe getting a corner outfielder. Because this whole season started by thinking you had Jurickson Profar in place to be your left fielder, and all he did was fail a drug test and get suspended for 162 games plus the playoffs. But it did give you $15 million to push into your trade deadline war chest, if you want to call it that. But this team's got to find a way to start hitting again. That's the bottom line. I know they need pitching, but you cannot win when you do not score runs, and the Braves continue to show us this over the past 3 weeks. It's been a tough watch, but it's an absolute. And I know who deals in absolutes, but I'll tell you this. You have to outscore the other guys. We all know that. And the Braves are not doing a very good job of that right now. But ultimately, I think a lot's going to be asked of guys that are in the house right now. Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Drake Baldwin, Michael Harris. Hey, Mauricio Dubon, come on down. But you need more from Austin Riley. You got to get Ronald Acuna Jr. healthy. Can you ever get this group looking like it could look, the best version of it, with more guys than not going? I think so. But we haven't seen it. We haven't seen enough of it yet. I'll put it that way. Well, the Braves are done on this road trip. They come home with a 1-5 record from that. And overall, the Atlanta Braves up by 3 games on the Philadelphia Phillies in the National League East standings at 49-33, 16 games over 500, as they drop 2 out of 3 to the San Francisco Giants. Coming home, it will be Tuesday, Game 1 against the St. Louis Cardinals, a 3-game series there, so a Monday off day. The Braves will start Martin Perez, and then outside of that, they're going to have to figure out who they want to lean on. Essentially, I think they got a piggyback situation going on where they'll have to look at Reynaldo Lopez, Grant Holmes, and Hurston Waldrop and see who gives them the best chance to win on that day. And then also, not for nothing, but you got to hope Martin Perez continues to do what Martin Perez has done, and that has pretty much been give the Braves a chance to win every 5th day. That's quite a story for you. We talked about it last week, but Martin Perez continues to pay dividends for this team. Can he keep it going? Because right now you're looking at basically Chris Sale, Martin Perez, and a whole bunch of question marks in your starting rotation, and that may not be changing anytime soon. We'll see how the Braves choose to handle that. But that's going to do it for this edition of From the Diamond. A lot of unfun stuff on this one. Unfortunately for the Braves, it's just been one thing after another heading in the wrong direction. They'll get the day off on Monday. They'll come on back. They will try to pick up some wins against the St. Louis Cardinals, and then they will mercifully, I think, close the book on the month of June because it has been a very, very unfun month. We look forward to catching up with you next week for 2 hours of Braves and Baseball Talk. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find it on the Odyssey app as well. I am on social media at Grant McAuley on most platforms, including all the fun baseball card stuff I'm doing, so please check that out. Thanks to my producer, Dom, for running a great show again today, and thank you to all of you for joining me here on From the Diamond. We'll be back again next Sunday. Until then, I've been Grant McAuley. So long, everyone.